Ferrari engineers opened Hamilton's Monaco qualifying data, expecting answers. What they found was more disturbing, because the data did not show a perfect car. It showed a Ferrari that had lost balance overnight, a car Hamilton said had taken a step backward, a car that should not have been fighting for the front of the grid anymore. And yet, Hamilton still put it third. On Friday, Ferrari looked untouchable. Hamilton was fastest. Leclerc was just 111 thousandths behind. The garage believed the SF26 was built for Monaco's slow corners, tight walls, and brutal pressure. Then Saturday arrived, and the car changed personality. Minimal setup changes. No clear explanation. 7 tenths missing in qualifying 1. Leclerc pushing until the barriers ended his lap. But Hamilton's data revealed the part Ferrari could not ignore. He was not driving around the problem. He was driving through it. And that single lap may have exposed the biggest secret inside Ferrari's season. Not whether Hamilton is fast enough. Whether Ferrari truly understands the car he just saved. Subscribe to the channel. Monaco is the one place where a Formula One car cannot lie for long. On a normal circuit, a fast car can hide a weakness. A long straight can cover a poor corner. A powerful engine can make the stopwatch look better than the driver feels. Even a bad setup can sometimes be rescued by clean air, tire strategy, or one section of the track where the car is naturally strong. But Monaco is different. Monaco strips everything down. It takes away the comfort. It takes away the escape routes. It takes away the margin. The driver is never far from a wall, never far from a mistake, never far from a kind of moment that can turn a promising weekend into a damaged car and a silent garage. That is why Ferrari's Friday performance mattered so much. Because before the confusion, before the emergency adjustments, before Leclerc's crash, before Hamilton's data became the most fascinating thing in the engineering room, Ferrari looked like it had found the perfect answer to Monaco. The SF26 looked calm. It looked sharp. It looked like a car that could breathe in the slow corners. And in Monaco, that is everything. This circuit does not reward brute force in the same way other tracks do. It rewards a car that rotates cleanly. A car that gives the driver confidence when the speed is low and the walls are close. A car that can change direction without feeling nervous. A car that lets the driver brake late, turn in with trust, and get back on the throttle without waiting for the rear to settle. That sounds technical, but the feeling is simple. Imagine walking along a narrow ledge. If your shoes grip perfectly, you move with confidence. You do not think about every step. Your body trusts the surface. But if your shoes slip even slightly, everything changes. You still might move forward, but now every step feels like a risk. That is Monaco in a Formula One car. And on Friday, Ferrari looked like it had the grip. Hamilton went fastest in second practice with a 1 minute, 13.026. Leclerc was right behind him, just 111 thousandths slower. That gap was tiny, but the meaning was huge. It told Ferrari the pace was not random. It told them the car was not only working for one driver. It told them both sides of the garage had found something real. For engineers, that is the kind of evidence that changes a weekend. One quick lap can be exciting, but 2 drivers at the front makes the picture stronger. It suggests the car has a foundation. It suggests the setup is in the right area. It suggests the performance is not just a lucky moment on a clean track. Ferrari did not just look fast. It looked repeatable. And that word matters more than people think. Repeatable speed is what every top team wants. A car that produces one miracle lap is useful, but a car that gives both drivers the same confidence over and over is dangerous. That is when rivals start paying attention. That is when a garage begins to believe. Ferrari had reasons to believe. The car's strengths matched the circuit. The low-speed performance looked strong. Monaco's tight layout reduced the importance of some weaknesses that might hurt Ferrari elsewhere. The weekend seemed to be moving toward the exact kind of fight the team wanted. Even outside Ferrari, the expectation was building. Lando Norris had already pointed toward Ferrari as a serious pole threat because their low-speed performance looked better than anyone else's. That kind of comment does not come from nowhere. Drivers can feel trends. Teams watch each other closely. When a rival says Ferrari looks dangerous, it means the paddock has seen the same pattern. And this is where pressure starts quietly. At first, confidence feels like power. Then it becomes a burden. Because once everyone believes Ferrari should be fighting for pole in Monaco, anything less starts to feel like a missed opportunity. The team is no longer chasing a surprise. It is defending an expectation. That is a very different kind of pressure. Hamilton's Friday pace made the story even sharper. He was not just close to the front. He was the benchmark. He had the car underneath him. He had the rhythm. He had the kind of feeling that lets a driver attack Monaco instead of surviving it. And Leclerc being so close behind added another layer. For Leclerc, Monaco is not only another track. It is home. It is personal. It is the race where every good lap feels bigger and every mistake feels heavier. With Ferrari looking strong, the pressure around him grew even more. So by the end of Friday, Ferrari had everything a team could ask for. A car suited to the circuit, 2 drivers at the front, a rival acknowledging their strength, a garage convinced the performance was real, and a clear path toward pole position. But here is the problem. When a car feels perfect in Monaco, teams become afraid to disturb it. They do not want to overreact. They do not want to chase changes that are not needed. They do not want to turn a good car into a confused one by adjusting too much overnight. The kind that begins when the first lap does not feel right, but everyone tells themselves the next one will be better. The kind that spreads quietly across the garage when the timing screen does not match the expectation. The kind that becomes impossible to ignore when the driver, who was fastest on Friday, suddenly sounds like he is fighting a different car. Hamilton felt it early. The Ferrari was not responding with the same sharpness. The balance had shifted. The grip was harder to find. The car was no longer giving him the clean answers he had trusted in practice. And at Monaco, when the answers change, the walls feel closer. That is the part people outside the cockpit often miss. A Formula One driver does not wait for a crash to know something is wrong. He feels it before the stopwatch fully explains it. He feels it through the steering wheel, through the brake pedal, through the way the rear of the car settles or refuses to settle, through the tiny delay between turning the wheel and feeling the front tires bite. That delay can be almost invisible. But around Monaco, almost invisible is enough to change everything. Because the circuit is built from commitment. The driver has to believe before the corner arrives. If he waits until he is completely sure, he is already too late. The lap time is gone. If he commits too much with a car that is not stable, the car is gone. That was the impossible line Hamilton had to walk. Ferrari expected qualifying to be the moment the Friday pace became real. Instead, qualifying became the moment the team realized the Friday feeling had disappeared. The first major warning came in qualifying 1. Hamilton was around 7/10 away from where he needed to be. That number is brutal in Monaco. 7/10 is not a little mistake. 7/10 is not one corner slightly missed. 7/10 means the car is outside the window. It means the driver is losing confidence in multiple places. It means the rhythm that should have carried the lap is breaking apart before it reaches the line. And this is where Ferrari's engineers had to shift from confidence to recovery. They were no longer polishing a pole contender. They were trying to understand why their strongest weapon had suddenly become uncertain. Inside the garage, the work became urgent. Hamilton made emergency adjustments, including changes around the rear wing angle, trying to bring the car back toward a balance he could attack with. That detail matters more than it sounds, because changing the car during qualifying is not a normal sign of control. It is a sign that the original plan is no longer enough. It means the team is reacting, not commanding. It means the engineers are trying to give the driver something usable before the session runs out. And Monaco does not give much time. The track keeps evolving. The tires have to be prepared. Traffic appears at the worst moments. Every other driver is chasing the same tiny space on the same narrow streets. The garage cannot stop the clock and solve the problem properly. They have to make decisions while the pressure is still rising. But the strangest part was not that the car felt bad. The strangest part was that Ferrari did not have a clean reason for it. Hamilton later made that clear. The team had not made major setup changes. The changes were minimal. He did not believe they had simply gone in the wrong direction overnight. That is where the mystery became serious. Because if the team had changed everything, the story would be simple. They could say they got greedy. They could say they chased more rotation or more stability or more downforce and paid the price. But this was not that. Ferrari had tried to protect the car from Friday. And still, the feeling was gone. That is the kind of problem that makes engineers stare at data for hours, because somewhere in those traces, there has to be a reason. Track temperature, tire behavior, rubber on the surface, pressure windows, mechanical balance, the way the car reacted to the slowest corners. Something had moved. The car did not simply become slow. It changed personality, and that is much worse. A slow car hurts the team's pride. A car that changes personality threatens the team's understanding. For Hamilton, none of that analysis could help in the moment. He had to drive. And driving Monaco with a car that no longer feels natural is like trying to write your name while someone keeps moving the paper. You still know what to do, but every movement needs correction. Every line takes more focus. Every mistake becomes easier. That was the condition of Hamilton's lap. It was not a flowing lap from a perfect Ferrari. It was a lap built from small saves, tiny compromises, and decisions made faster than anyone can explain them afterward. Brake a fraction earlier here, but not enough to lose the corner. Hold a little more speed there, but not enough to slide wide. Trust the front, but prepare for the rear. Attack, but do not cross the line. That kind of driving does not always look dramatic. The best drivers make it look controlled, but the data can tell a different story. It can show where the car was nervous. It can show where the throttle had to wait. It can show where the steering correction was slightly different from the previous day. And that is why Hamilton's data became so important. Because the engineers were not just measuring what time he set. They were measuring how he survived long enough to set it. He reached third with a 1 minute, 12.279. Not pole, not the front row, not the clean ending Ferrari had imagined after Friday. But given the state of the car, it was a rescue result. And rescue results are often more revealing than dominant ones. When a driver takes pole in the best car, the data can look beautiful. Everything connects. The car gives grip. The driver takes it. The lap becomes a straight line of confidence. But when a driver qualifies third in a car that has lost its balance, the data becomes more interesting. It shows adaptation. It shows the places where confidence was missing. It shows the driver changing his approach in real time, turning a lap that could have collapsed into one that still kept Ferrari near the front. That is what would have amazed the engineers. Not just the speed, the method. Because Hamilton was not simply asking the Ferrari to do what it did on Friday. He was adjusting to the Ferrari he had on Saturday. A weaker Ferrari, a more nervous Ferrari, a car that demanded respect in places where it had given freedom only hours earlier. That is the difference between driving with rhythm and driving with resistance. On Friday, Hamilton could lean into the car. On Saturday, he had to manage it. And yet the results stayed strong enough to embarrass the problem. That is the uncomfortable part for Ferrari. Hamilton's lap made the car look better than it felt. From the outside, third place can soften the story. It can make people say Ferrari still had pace. It can make the qualifying results seem solid, maybe even promising for the race. But inside the team, the data would not allow that easy comfort. Because the engineers knew the lap had not come from a settled car. They knew the driver had been at the limit. They knew the balance had cost them a chance at the front row. And they knew Leclerc was dealing with the same overall issue on the other side of the garage. That is when the story began to split. Hamilton's data showed survival. Leclerc's final attempt showed the danger. Charles Leclerc had every reason to push. He was at home. Ferrari had been fast. The opportunity had been real. The team needed a lap that could pull the weekend back toward the dream everyone had believed in after Friday. But Monaco does not care about the dream. It only cares about the next braking zone. Leclerc went looking for more in qualifying 3, and the barriers ended the attempt. He finished fourth with a 1 minute, 12.351, but the damage to the story was greater than the position. Because now Ferrari had two forms of evidence. One driver had dragged a troubled car into third. The other had pushed a troubled car into the wall. And between those two outcomes was the question Ferrari had to answer. Was Hamilton's lap proof of extraordinary control, or proof that the car was dangerously hard to read? The answer may be both. That is why this qualifying session was so powerful. It did not hand Ferrari a simple villain. It did not say the driver failed or the team failed or the car was completely wrong. It gave them something more complicated. A car with real pace but fragile confidence. A driver who could rescue a lap but not the weekend. A teammate who had the speed but lost the margin. A team that had arrived expecting control, then spent qualifying chasing clarity. And this is where the engineer's amazement becomes darker. Because amazement in Formula One is not always celebration. Sometimes it is the moment a team sees a driver produce something impressive and immediately realizes the result has hidden the size of the problem. Hamilton's third place kept Ferrari alive. But the data behind it may have made the engineers more worried, not less. Because if a car requires that much from the driver just to hold third in Monaco, then the team cannot simply say, the pace is fine. They have to ask why the pace was so difficult to access. They have to ask why the car was brilliant in practice and uncertain in qualifying. They have to ask why minimal setup changes led into maximum confusion. And most of all, they have to ask whether Hamilton saved them from a bad result or exposed the weakness that could follow them into the next race. That is the line Ferrari crossed on Saturday. They moved from believing they had a fast Monaco car to questioning whether they truly understood that fast Monaco car. And that difference is enormous, because speed can win a session, understanding wins seasons.